Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX agency. Check us out. And welcome to episode 122, Improving Your Creative Capacity. Our guest, who I'll introduce in a moment, is Daniel Engelberg. And if you are already knowing that you are a fan, then you're happy to see him again. If you're not sure if you're a fan, you should be. You can find him in previous episode 114. Go check the playlist for the live streamed podcasts. Episode 114 was Overcoming Limited Access to Users. Lots of great advice there, and that's where he cultivated his first round of fans here on the show. So we're going to bring him in and introduce him quickly. Remember, we are live today, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Hi, Nadia. Hello to the low ego action heroes out there. So I'm going to spell his name and let him introduce himself. Daniel is Daniel, and Engelberg is Engelberg. Daniel, tell us all about you.
Hi, Debbie. Well, actually, a while ago I stopped defining myself, so it's always a challenge to explain who I am. I have to remember. But in a nutshell, I'm trained in cognitive psychology and neuropsychology and computer science. And then I did a degree in human-computer interaction. So I've done UX research and design for over 25 years, and I specialize in complex and technical projects. And now I'm an insight specialist, I'm a UX product strategist, a business strategist, organizational change agent, and a coach. And I teach people how to think creatively, especially about complex challenges.
Because what's complexity after all?
You find
Future.
that out in my training.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Very
And hello
important.
to Aitan, who's giving us the waving emojis. So just so you know, today Daniel's got some PowerPoint slides we're going to go through, but I'll be watching the chat room for any questions worth interrupting him for. So if you need some clarification on something, make sure you're asking. Hi, Vazia. There's Vazia's happy to be joining us live. So do you want to jump in? I'm going to be manning the PowerPoint or womaning the PowerPoint.
My pleasure. So let's start at the beginning, how this all started. Originally, I actually wasn't very creative. And I enjoyed when other people were creative, but I didn't feel it was that important for me. I thought I was doing all right. Well, I studied in cognitive psychology because I had a question. What are the limits of the human mind? And can we extend those limits? And I went into UX design because at that time I was learning about information design, and I saw that software could be an extension of the mind, if it can present information in new ways that help us think, and if it could help us do the task in better ways. Well, there you go. So obviously I was kind of unconventional, from the start, but as I said, I wasn't that creative. And one day I finally realized my lack of creativity was a problem because a UX project needed me to be creative. And I didn't know how. It was like creativity. It's like I have to do something special for that. And I didn't know what to do. So I had my UX methods, but I just assumed that would be enough, and it wasn't. And around the same time, Don Norman came out with an article saying that UX people are perceived as uncreative. And maybe they are uncreative. So that hit close to home for me. And I said, okay, maybe I need to find out about this. And I was always really interested in creativity, but that was the trigger. And that launched me on 2 decades of research and discovery about creativity. And I looked, everywhere outside of UX design. And that, in the training, I explain everywhere I looked, but lots of places. So the techniques and the principles in this training came out of that. They're what I had to teach myself to become deeply creative. and I'm a slow learner, so it took like over 20 years. And it just came together for me recently. So I know these principles can work because they worked for me. They really transformed me. And I enjoy teaching. So I decided I want to teach it because I know it can really make a difference. So
So you're going to tell
let's
us what
start at
creativity is? I'm
well,
dying
yes. So,
here.
so let's start with that. What is creativity? And there's actually a lot of confusion about creativity. When I teach my course, I spend like the beginning just demystifying it and deprogramming false beliefs about creativity.
And tell me when to move
But
to
to
the
be
next slide.
uh,
I'm on
Not yet.
slide
It'll
one.
won't be for a while. Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
just leave it there for now.
Thanks.
Um, so there's a lot of confusion because the same word can mean three different things at least. It means a special kind of result, right? Different from the norm, unexpected. Some people just mean excellent. I had one project where the client said, I want a really creative result. What he really meant was, I want an excellent result. And of course, it can mean expressive and artistic. That's the way a lot of people think of it. There's another way it's used as a work method. So, standard creativity techniques like brainstorming. It's a method that you use at a specific time in a project. And there's a third way to understand creativity, which is a mental process that generates creative results. Now, mental processes are hidden, so we tend not to talk about them or think about them. But that's where it gets exciting. Because if you want to become truly creative, this is where the answers are. So, and I mean truly creative, not just at the moment that you're applying a method, but in your whole life. So let's focus on what's hidden about creativity. As a process, the source of creativity is the spontaneous and unrestricted movement of the whole person. Creativity comes from the whole person, not just the mind, and it can express itself anywhere in the person, not just the mind. It's a whole body experience. It's thrilling, sparkly feeling, right? It makes you feel alive. So, I invite people who are watching to think back to a time when they were feeling really creative. So it might have been at work, it might have been in a sport or a hobby that you were doing, or maybe you were just having an amazing conversation that, was thrilling and you were discovering things about the other person or about, you know, some topic you were interested. Maybe you were at a museum and you felt really creative looking at a painting or writing in your diary. A lot of people take really fun vacation trips to a new place. Well, what's fun about those vacations is you're learning new stuff and you're forced to be creative to adapt to new environments, the new customs that you had never thought about. You're learning about new cultures. So that's a feeling of creativity too. Just that adapting to completely new circumstances. So anyway, remember how that felt in your body. If it was intellectual, you remember the thrill of a sudden insight. It's like an electric charge going through your body. That's creativity. That's the raw source of creativity. So everyone's experienced it. Here's the thing. Most people only feel alive like that for a few minutes a day, sometimes less. And we assume that's normal and healthy because most people never experience it any differently. But do you realize what that means? It means you're living most of your life feeling kind of dead. I mean, I felt like that a lot of my life. So, what if you could feel alive all the time or most of the time? What if you could approach everything creatively? True creativity is a continuous way of being. That's how naturally creative people experience it, highly creative people. And it involves skills for sure, but it's much more than a skill. So, you know, the question is, how can you teach that, right? It sounds intimidating, and a lot of people are probably thinking, well, can can I really become that creative? So I have an answer. I teach creativity with two components. Okay, the first is spontaneous and unrestricted movement of the whole person. That's creativity as a way of being. The second component is thinking skills that gradually transform the mind. Okay? The skills focus creativity and amplify it so you can be more successful with it. So here's the thing, you know, the raw creativity as a way of being, it's like a lamp. Okay? It shines light everywhere. But with the thinking skills, you focus all that light like a laser so that it can be super effective. The thinking skills start as conscious techniques. You have to learn them consciously and remind yourself to use them. But they're simple and they're techniques that apply to everything. So over time, they become a way of being and a way of thinking. So it's like an operating system upgrade for your mind. And there's a third component. I teach ideas and methods that bring all of this together so that students can solve hard and complex problems and transformation goals. You learn to dissolve complexity and see through complexity to the bones of a problem. And then you see how to transform problems easily. So, when I think that a lot of people experience a lot of stress handling complex problems because they don't have all the tools. Uh, but when you learn all of this, you can't wait for a hard problem or complex problem because the harder the better. You get to play. Okay, so next question is, do we really need creativity if we have great methodology? Let's say you're an advanced expert in your field, or you feel you're doing well with your methodology. Well, the thing is, we use the same work methods whether we create an amazing solution or a mediocre one, right? Or even a failure. You can fail with an amazing work method. That's because methods don't tell you how to do everything. You have to make a lot of choices on your own and take a lot of initiative on your own to fill in the gaps in the methodology. The method is just a rough outline, at least in our field, in UX design. So what makes the difference is you and how you apply the method. That's creativity. We think I, I really succeeded on this project because of my method. Well, no, it's because you, with your own initiative, added something special. And we don't think of it as creativity, but it is because that all came from inside you. So it makes a huge difference to solution quality and project success. It's just we don't when we succeed, we assume it's because of the method. When we fail, sometimes we think it's because of us. I don't know. We don't blame the method either, but maybe we should sometimes. So um, even if you don't need a creative result, you still need to think creatively about the problem and the data. So real creativity gives you thinking skills that can apply to anything, even traditional types of results. But if your goal is a revolutionary and transformative solution, you definitely need creativity, no matter how good your methods are, because they're not going to tell you how to be creative at a high level. People think transformative solutions are only for disruptive players. that's a misunderstanding. Transformative solutions are amazingly successful, and all projects can use that. But when you learn to think transformationally, you can apply that everywhere, and your standards go way up because you see what's possible. So that's what I teach. I teach transformational creativity and transformational thinking. A lot of, there's this common saying that creativity is already in us, and well, is creativity really in you? Well, if it was, you wouldn't need this course. The thing is, yes, we all have undeveloped creativity in us, but why don't we have access to it? Where did the missing creativity go? Creativity can only express itself through your self-definition, through yourself, but it's really your self-definition because you've created it. And most of us have blockages in our self-definition. So as you undo the blockages, the creativity starts flowing. That's the beginning of creativity as a way of being. You can go further. You can work on redefining your self-definition, but just at this level makes a huge difference. And that's what gives you the raw creativity. The other side of creativity is to empower it with advanced thinking skills, by focusing it. So, and obviously those skills aren't in you until you learn them. So yes, it's in you, but you have to learn how to develop it and draw it out. And that takes special process.
Can I throw in a question that we've received?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if you're going to cover this later, so I apologize if it's early, but friend of the show, Aitan, wants to know, how does one measure creativity?
I'm not going to get into that now because this is about training how to become creative. Then the next question is, how we can measure it. And the problem is that typically we measure creativity by the results and by how different the results are from what is expected. But there's a difference between that and being creative in your head, right? So the relationship is very indirect, and when you try to develop your creativity just with, like, my goal is create different results, novel results. Well, then it doesn't really tell you what you should be doing, like how to become creative, and then people get all twisted around and mixed up. So you need the underneath, and the part underneath, the hidden part, is much more difficult to measure. That's inside the brain, right? But
Thanks.
you can measure creativity at the personality level. There are standardized creativity tests. So I guess if you take the training, maybe we'll measure you at the beginning and at the end.
Or maybe just look for some of your outputs and outcomes and see if you feel like you're improving what you were doing.
Right.
Okay, thanks. Please carry on.
So in the end, I did answer the question. uh, okay, so let's talk about the personality thing. A lot of people believe that creativity is a personality thing. And if you're not a creative person fundamentally, that a lot of people are worried they can't learn creativity, and can you learn creativity as a way of being if you don't think of yourself as naturally creative? So creativity is partly a personality thing. It's been studied scientifically. They can do the tests. But the popular assumption is that personality can't change. And we have increasing evidence that's false. So increasingly, we're starting to realize that personality is contextual. It changes depending who you're with and what environment you're in. And increasingly, therapists are finding techniques of healing and transformation that have a profound effect. And a lot for a lot of people, uh, personality is constructed around trauma and other kinds of blockages. So that when you resolve the blockage, the personality starts to change just very easily on its own. To start becoming a creative person, you don't have to change your whole personality. You just need to start undoing certain blockages that were interfering with being creative. So, and this training provides the tools for addressing those blockages. Maybe you're thinking, are you going to take the course and wake up one day with a new personality, super creative? Well, it's not like that. I understand if I was claiming that, I'd understand skepticism. But your creativity is going to develop slowly. Lots of slow changes build into a huge creative difference over time. But time, we're talking years, right? The course just, it starts you off, it plants the seeds. And it's because so I do the training more slowly than standard industrial training. Uh, and it's because we do it slowly that you can change. So your creativity continues developing after the course, but even during, you start feeling a difference. So basically, creativity is perceived as a personality thing that you can't change, but I found some loopholes. And, so can even an uncreative, and maybe you're very creative in other ways that you don't realize, but can anyone become highly creative as a way of being? The answer is yes, but it requires two conditions. First, you have to be really motivated to grow because it requires personal change. And second, you need a special kind of training that focuses on the growth process. And that's what I provide. So that's what I teach. It's a journey of growing into creativity as a way of being. It's a combination of expanding into unrestricted movement and thinking skills that gradually transform the mind. This has a lot of value. Partly, it's just exciting to grow creatively, right? And you start approaching your work as play, so work becomes more fun. And it's easier to find great solutions. You don't have to work as hard. Obviously, you can get much better solutions. We're going to be talking about that in a little while. But there's one area in particular where the creativity that I teach makes a huge difference, and that's on the hardest problems. So, complex problems, innovation, undefined problems, transformation goals. You don't learn all of that at the beginning. I teach it in stages. At the higher levels, this training develops creativity, especially for solving hard applied problems like that. But everyone can benefit, and you can stop wherever you want in the training. You don't have to take the whole series of courses. So you decide where you want to stop. And finally, like maybe you want to do more meaningful work, like valuable innovations, social change, sustainability. Well, these are the skills you need. And leading edge employers, creative companies are increasingly looking for this. It's called soft skills, but it's pretty hard. And it's hard in the sense of very concrete and specific. So I call my process the creative capacity roadmap. Creative capacity roadmap. It's a roadmap because it lays out a path of how to grow creatively in stages. The stages have a meaningful sequence. each stage lays the foundations for the next stage. And by learning in stages, you get a manageable amount at a time. So you can integrate it and actually grow. And look, this is how children grow. They don't do it all at once. We don't teach them everything at once. Teach them a little bit at a time in terms of what they're ready for. So it's like continuing your creative development where you left off as a child. Okay, Debbie, can you show the next slide?
I absolutely can. Here we are on slide 2, your roadmap.
Okay, great. So this is the Creative Capacity Roadmap. It's in 8 stages, and each stage is a separate training course. But I don't start at stage 1. I start at stage 3. Now let me take you through this. The initial stage of creativity is trial and error. This is how children learn, and it's how novices learn. Novices learn. Trial and error is the basis of agile. It's the basis of lean methods, and it's extremely effective. Except that in industry, it's often not done well enough to be highly effective. So we'll briefly go through that, what you need to do trial and error learning really well. And one of the problems is people don't iterate enough. For trial and error to be effective, you have to iterate a lot. But anyway, so this is the basis. The next stage is fixed skills. So that's your domain expertise. It's what probably most of the viewers here already have to some extent. And it's the basis for everything that follows. Now, in itself, there's some creativity in it. So remember what I told you, even with standard methodology, you have to use your own thinking to read between the lines, fill in the gaps, take initiative on things that the methodology doesn't tell you at the lowest level of detail. But in any case, this methodology, this expertise is really important. So you're going to use that in the next levels. You're going to be creative with it and through it. Okay, we're not going to, I'm not telling you stop using your skills, your expertise. No, we're going to build on that. So, I mean, the sad part is just that a lot of people, they stall their whole lives at the level of their expertise and fixed skills. They don't get the thrill of being, really creative with their methods, but you're going to learn that. So that's my training starts at level 3. By the way, I also teach fixed skills. I teach UX design and UX strategy, but my focus is more on the creative stuff. Okay, so creativity, course stage number 3 is where it all starts. I call it creativity because it's the foundations of creative solutions. This is where you start understanding that creativity is based on making new connections. Okay. Everything you learn at this stage of the course is designed to help you make new connections and more connections. You learn to think in a connected way. And it sounds simple and it's designed to be simple, but there are a lot of non-obvious techniques that go into that. So, for example, you've heard of beginner's mind, stuff like that. You're going to be learning things like that. You're going to be learning how to be comfortable in ambiguity and uncertainty and confusion. How to deal with confusion and how to expand your thinking. So the first stage of creativity is a big expansion process. Well, how to expand your thinking to new things that you never considered before when you were approaching problems. When you expand to all those new things, then you have a rich source of, new ideas that can become creative connections. You need that for your creativity. So the first stage focuses on the mental expansion. And then creative insight gets even more exciting because what is creative insight? It's the aha moment, right? It's a moment where you suddenly get a completely new understanding of a problem that transforms your understanding of the problem and the solutions. Now, why is that important? Everyone experiences that at some point in their careers and lives occasionally, but when you achieve creative insight, you're starting to think transformationally because creative insights transform the problem and the solution. So you get a much higher level of result, a much higher quality, much more successful result, and more innovative because you're starting to get closer to the root causes and root solutions. As I said, everyone has moments of creative insight, but there are ways of consistently achieving creative insight. And that's what I teach in this section. And so your whole goal during this phase, during this stage of your growth is how can I achieve creative insight on this problem? Clear thinking, a lot of people underestimate. It sounds simple and boring, but actually, creative thinking is one of the most important things you can learn for dealing with complex problems because it's about aligning your mind with the reality of the problem. Now, that's why I have this shape sorting cube to the right of the diagram. But here's the thing, in standard thinking, we try to fit the problem into our way of thinking, into our current way of thinking. So what happens if the problem isn't a shape of one of these cubes that fits in to the holes? Well, let's say, it's a big 7-pointed star shaped peg. Well, it's not going to fit in. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to cut it to the shape of a square or one of the other shapes that will fit in. Then you plop it in and you say, oh yeah, okay, I've solved the problem. The problem is you haven't solved the problem. You've just fitted it to your way of thinking. And when we do that, problems become apparently very complex. But if you can learn to fit your way of thinking to the problem, then complexity dissolves.
I'm
That's
going
what
to
we
jump in
learn.
with a question from the chat room if you don't mind.
Mhm.
So, Kayleen, who's watching you go through this, says, is there any way to apply these principles to some kind of exercise or example? I'm having time picturing what each step means. Do you have
Yeah,
maybe a
we're going to
concrete example for each step?
absolutely, we're going to discuss that right away. And maybe we'll skip right to that now.
Oh, yeah, I think as you're explaining these stages, it would really help if people had a concrete example. So please do.
For sure. It
Thanks.
is abstract. And you know, it's hard to understand the higher stages until you get through the lower stages. So maybe I'm overloading you now. So let's go back to the beginning. I'm going to get to an example really quickly, but I just want to mention quickly that that these stages, each stage includes success factors. So you learn personal development principles for creative growth at that stage. You learn advanced thinking skills for complex problems, and you learn to apply it in organizations. And generally, each stage is about 14 weeks, or around one class per week. So let's let's apply this, all these skills that I use to a problem. Okay. I'm not going to talk about any one stage. The skills will be across stages, and I'll explain at the end which skills I was learning that you'll learn. Sorry, which skills I was using that you'll learn. So, Debbie, can you advance to the example slide with pictures? Yes. Okay. Well, so this question is becoming sort of topical today, right? Open plan offices versus cubicles, because new research is coming out, scientific research, that open plan offices don't work as well as we thought. The original idea was that they'd improve collaboration, and that people might just enjoy having more open space. But it turns out there's lots of problems with them. I don't want to go into all the problems right now. But, understanding that research, well, in standard thinking, you might decide we should go back to cubicles, right? Because that's where we came from. So it's probably where we're going to go back to. In creative thinking, in my approach, we know neither option is that great. They both have significant compromises. So we don't want to accept forced choices. What's the real problem? Why are we asking the question to begin with? How did we get there? What mentality led to this situation? You might be familiar with the intellectual factory metaphor. That's part of the contribution. I'm just going to be asking questions raising questions. I'm not going to be answering them, but when you answer them, you get interesting solutions. So what are the real needs? Can we come up with another alternative that's not one of those two? Maybe different employees have different preferences. So why are we trying to give everyone the same solution? Why are we packing so many employees into such big spaces to begin with? Right? Why would anyone naturally choose to spend their day like that if they had a choice? What does evolutionary psychology tell us, or social psychology? Why are we building office buildings that only have window space for a few privileged employees when everyone needs natural light? And how does limited natural lighting constrain our choices about office layout? That's actually people don't realize it. It was one of the motivations for the open plan offices, because you get a lot more light in. Everyone gets to enjoy a little bit of natural light. Okay. If we really valued employees and we weren't just trying to minimize costs, what would we do? How much money could you save just by having happier employees? Maybe that would offset the cost of a better solution. How much of the problem is driven by financial assumptions and limitations? And finally, what are the work processes we're trying to support? Managers want to support collaboration, and the assumption is that open plans encourage collaboration, but what we're finding they don't. They actually have the opposite effect. So if the goal is to encourage collaboration, if that's the real question behind the furniture question, well, have we considered all the other ways? The biggest problem in most offices isn't the floor configuration, it's the lack of meeting rooms, right? If everyone had their own closed office, you wouldn't need so many meeting rooms because people can meet in their offices. And a lot of meetings are just 2 to 4 people. Today, for a 2-person meeting, well, you might have to reserve a boardroom for 10 people. So all the rooms get reserved very quickly, and it becomes hard to have a spontaneous conversation. We've created environments where people can't have spontaneous conversations, which is what we were trying to, achieve the opposite effect. So imagine how much more collaboration there would be if employees didn't have to compete for meeting rooms. And Microsoft originally designed its head office campus this way. I don't know if they're still like that, but they built long, narrow buildings to give every employee a private office with a window, at least for the developers. And I think Apple's new flying saucer headquarters is designed around that principle as well, because it has a lot of window space per employee. But I don't know if they have private offices. So we can even back up further and question the sacred cow. Why are we meeting so much? There are obvious benefits to meeting and collaboration you can't avoid. But how much of it is valuable? Are informational meetings necessary? How much meeting time is caused by unproductive churn? When meeting participants think uncreatively, then they don't get clarity and they churn from one bad solution to another. So how much meeting time is added because meeting participants aren't prepared? So that maybe if we just resolve those questions, we can reduce, the meeting problem and the meeting room problem by 30 or 40%. So here's the thing: when you don't change your thinking, if you just try to answer the question the way it's asked, between open plan offices and cubicles, you end up with mediocre solutions that don't solve the core problem. Sometimes those solutions are even presented as revolutionary. Superficially, they're very different, but they don't change anything. So how is this possible? Because our standards are incredibly low. We don't realize that we could be solving core problems, and we don't realize there are creative ways to do that easily, with creative insight, things like that. Traditional thinking on office spaces, literally in the box. It accepts the assumptions and it works with them. It's a lazy way of thinking. So what's the result? It's a casual brutality. It's not intentional. No one wants employees to be miserable, but that's the result. That's what happens when you try to fit a problem uncreatively to your way of thinking. Okay, and that's what I meant by stage 5. When about aligning your mind with the reality of the problem. But we do this everywhere, and fitting problems to the way we think, that's the world we've created, with some exceptions. But the best exceptions are cases where people challenge the assumptions. You have to learn to identify and challenge assumptions. Okay, so here are some of the creative principles that I applied in this example. Identify assumptions, question assumptions, and ask other questions. Here's the thing: when we present our thinking as statements, it stops us from thinking. Questions give you the permission to think, and it leads to other questions. But in normal thinking, we only ask 1 or 2 questions. If you keep on asking lots and lots of questions, it puts you into a mode of thinking. It's actually a new mode of thinking that opens your mind and increases your mental flexibility. So we learn that in the training. And then it becomes easier to make connections, and it becomes easier to imagine creative futures, which I did with some of the questions. Some more principles. Think non-dualistically. Don't accept forced choices between 2 options. Think win-win instead of win-lose. Maybe spending more money on employees would give everyone a win. Think more broadly about the problem and its underlying causes. So one of the principles we learn is that the causes of a problem often aren't found at the level where the problem is defined. You can't solve a problem at the level that it's defined initially, like office furniture. The problem we were discussing was phrased as an office furniture problem or a floor problem, but it wasn't. So you had to think much more broadly to understand the real source of the problem. No matter how creative you are, if you don't broaden your thinking about the problem, you'll just find maybe a more creative kind of cubicle and maybe it'll be a little bit better, but it might not be a lot better. So look for root causes. Look for key levers that will solve those root causes easily. Set insight as a goal. Okay, and don't stop until you get insight, because when you get insight, that's that thrill, that electrical feeling in your body that's your body telling you, oh, you're onto something big. You might have a solution that would really transform the problem. It would be highly successful. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, and I just wanted to remind you that we're actually 45 minutes in, so we've got
Yeah,
only 15 minutes left, and everyone's welcome to ask their questions about creativity and going up the roadmap. Go
well,
ahead.
that's it. I just have another 30 seconds.
Oh, wow. Okay, go ahead.
So this is what the training teaches. It's transformational thinking through transformational creativity. It's all about developing your creativity to the point where it can transform problems, solutions, and not just problems and solutions. You learn to transform yourself, organizations. This can have effect on societies. Um, and then the question is, how do you do all that? Well, take my course. I'll teach you. Okay, let's take some questions.
Just a small plug there. Should I go to the next slide or?
Um, you can put it back on the 8 steps,
Okay, steps, 10
just
steps,
for
8
now.
steps. Okay. Anybody have questions about steps and thinking about things in new ways and shifting your creativity to another level by moving beyond trial and error and just the methodologies we already know? I know you're probably all still absorbing what we've just heard, and thanks to Daniel for that. Um, any any thoughts, questions, disagreements? It's a quiet bunch today. I think you got them thinking.
That's good.
That's my
You know,
guess.
it takes a while uh, sometimes to think that questions don't always start immediately. But when you take my course, you'll learn to start with questions.
Well, I guess one question I have is how do I know where I am on this roadmap or scale? Because, self awareness is tough, and I might think I'm a freaking genius. I must be at 6, 7, 8. How do I know where I am? Can I assess myself, or do we rely on you for that?
Well, I'm assuming most people are somewhere at the beginning to middle of level 3, but um, I'll tell you if someone is interested in taking the training, I'll tell them more about what is the content. And if you think you're advanced already, we can see maybe you'll just sit in on certain classes, or maybe you can skip to the next level. But everyone has to start at least at the next level. And I
Cool. Okay.
think it'll, even if you know a lot about creativity, it's a great opportunity to renew what you know and learn it in a different way that might be more effective, might give you some more insight into it.
And it looks like we have some people who are coming into the stream late, so they're watching the beginning while we are in the future. And Linda says, I love Daniel's comment about your body reacting to a transformational insight. So true. So Linda's from about 40 minutes ago. Linda, we'll see you soon. Um, so, Daniel, you've mentioned your course, and of course, we do allow people to come on this show and promote some things that they're doing. So, are you comfortable telling people where they can learn more about the course, or do you have a price on it? Or is there a slide on it?
Yes, advance to the next slide.
Alrighty, let's
Uh,
see.
Back,
Oh,
well, I think the
that was
last
the clear
slide.
thinking
Keep on,
slide.
keep on going. Keep on
Roadmap is
going to
slide
the end.
6, and the
There
end.
we go.
Ta-da!
So, so this is where you can reach me. And I'm looking for pilot students. This is going to be the first course, the first time
Ooh.
that anyone takes the course. It's
Because
a
you've been
special
teaching this
opportunity.
you've been doing this as corporate training, but this is the first time you're doing it as a more public training?
Yeah, I've been doing parts of it as corporate training, but this is the first time it's coming together in a big way. Uh, and and look, it worked for me. I really think it's going to work for you, but that's why I'm calling it a pilot course. And I'm only charging half price because we're all going to be learning.
Well, thank you. And you said it
Uh,
was once a week for 14 weeks?
that's my plan. It will definitely need 14 weeks. We'll have to decide between once a week for like 2 hours or twice a week for a shorter, like 1 hour. But that's a detail. It's 14
Sure.
weeks
And
for the
well, we
first
can
one.
decide that with the pilot group. How many people are you looking for your pilot group?
I'm looking for 10 to 15 people, and I'm assuming some people will drop out, just because they decide it's not for them. It's fine. So I'm gonna accept a few more people at the beginning than I'm planning for. I'm not expecting people to drop out because they don't like it, but just because they realize it's not for them. Um,
Always possible.
it's possible.
And
So
Luciano in LinkedIn says, "This is fascinating. Thank you."
you're very welcome.
So,
Uh,
okay, so will the website tell us how much this is? Are you comfortable quoting a price live on the air? Should we go to the website?
So I've set it up at $700, which is it comes to $50 a week. For 2 hours of classes, that's like $25 a class.
Is
I think
that
that's
750
reasonable.
before the half off?
So it's 700 is
Or
is the half off.
is the half off? Okay.
Normally this kind of training you can pay around $100 per class easily, or per hour of class. So you might be paying up to $200 a week.
Well, maybe some people can use funds. If they have funds at their job for professional development, maybe this is something they could talk to their manager about if the training interests them.
Definitely. And if you want, I can come in and, train your whole team, or anyone else in the organization. This training is going to be amazing for UX people because my background is in UX, so I really understand where you're coming from. And we can also talk about applying it to UX. But it's valuable for anyone who solves complex problems, who has big challenges, or who just wants to become creative.
I'm certainly curious about it. I'll put me down as a maybe.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious about what you're gonna show, and to me, my success criteria for things like that is, do I feel like I've improved 10%? Like I don't have to improve 6,000%. Do I see any positive change in myself? If I see a positive change in myself, I usually feel like it's worth it. We've got a chat room question from friend of the show, Ralitza, who says, "Hello, question. What can I expect as a result of finishing the course? What is the intended outcome?" Good question. What's the success criteria of the course? So how will we know we've done it right?
The success criterion is, first of all, that you're having a lot more fun, and that it's becoming easier to be creative, and to achieve creative results. And at the higher levels, the criterion will be that you are thinking transformationally, and that your results just, you know, they transform the problem, and people go, wow, how did you do that?
Got it. So, yeah, if I could see an improvement in that in myself, I would feel like that's worth it. So, yeah, I'll say put me on the list as a maybe. And we'll see if we can get
Excellent.
some more low ego action heroes with some disposable budget or some funds from work to give it a try. I would suggest
And,
for some
and
of our audience maybe a payment plan.
yeah, I can work that out. We can work
Thanks.
with payment plans.
Thank you.
Um, and I just want to get back to the person who, talked about that feeling of energy in the body, that thrill. Uh, that's what you get with the creative insight stage, especially. But you start experiencing it even in stage 3, and it becomes addictive. Honestly, you can never go back.
I don't know if this is part of this universe or you can just tell me I'm being irrelevant, but does anything in your course or model speak to why I appear to be most creative in the shower?
Oh, yes. Well,
Oh,
for sure. We talk about the scientific uh, knowledge about training. It's a lot of scientific information.
okay.
Um, and you're creative in the shower because you need to actually stop thinking about a problem in order for the ideas to reassemble themselves in your mind in new connections, right? It's all about connections. So in the shower, you're thinking about something else, and suddenly, like a new connection shapes in a way that you hadn't planned it. Your unconscious is doing it. And so this lets your unconscious do the heavy lifting.
I like it. I like it. It echoes something someone I also greatly admire said. Joe Rohde had posted something to Instagram that I then put on LinkedIn about how a lot of the best disruptive ideas or innovations or creativity don't happen in scheduled brainstorming workshops and things like that because we're all now doing exercises and frameworks and fill in the template and things like that. And he talked about how the creativity happens when you take a walk, when your mind is free to make new connections. And it sounds like you are echoing that.
Very much. It's something that we learn in the course and we focus on.
Cool. Cool. Well, we've got time for a couple of more questions. If anybody has any, put them up here. Otherwise, if there's a topic you're hoping Daniel will cover in the future, let me know and we will convince him to come back with or without slides. But until then, Daniel, let's remind everybody they can find you on LinkedIn as Daniel Engelberg. Remind everybody of your web address.
So my my web address is called Advanced Applied Thinking. That's the name of the
.com.
course. Might sound intimidating.
No.
.com, yes,
Yeah, .com.
advancedappliedthinking.com, but it's really about creativity. So you can reach me through there. There's a contact form. There's a sign up form just to get on the wait list. It doesn't commit you. If you're interested, you might want to be one of the first people on the wait list. And you can also contact me through LinkedIn, send me a chat or whatever.
Excellent. Do you use any other social media? Are you a tweeter?
Nope, those are my
Okay.
main things.
Super. Then we'll all find you there. And I hope everybody who's curious about the course will reach out to Daniel. I am still curious. I'll have to ask him behind the scenes a little bit more about it. And if there aren't any other questions, I guess we'll be wrapping up. Let me take a quick look at the calendar so I can tell everybody what's coming up on the show. Remember, you can always check the show calendar at deltacx.link/events, and you can see everything I've got planned that is coming up. So take a look at that. Ralitsa says, there's another thing. A lot of information derived from different sources is being consolidated and put into coherent thought. So one way to increase your creative capacity is to know more and varied information. I don't know if that's a question, but what do you think of that?
Absolutely. To be creative, you have to traverse the territory in many different ways. That helps you make new connections, right? So that's partly means you need to learn creativity in many different ways, and you can apply that in your work to learning, problem domains in many different ways.
Super. Thanks. Quick show notes. Tomorrow is office hours. Ask me anything. Wednesday, we're going to brainstorm what we think our job title should be. Remember, I invited you to that Miro board. We're going to do it all again, Daniel. I had invited just Daniel. And then some of you stopped by as well. Friday will be reaction stream. And man, you are all sending me so much stuff. If you want to send me something wacky you found online that you want me to react to, deltacx.link/reaction. I will do as many of them as I can fit. Monday the 9th, we're going to start doing some micro lessons. I'm going to show you how I do note-taking, coding, and tagging when working with research data and affinity diagrams. I'll show you my way of doing it, which may or may not work for you. Feel free to adapt it into something better. Tuesday the 10th, we do not have Darren and Dr. Nick on the show. They're being postponed to the 17th. Wednesday the 11th, monthly Slack video networking. Hi, Wilson. You're late. We're just ending. Friday is reaction stream. Monday the 16th will be a micro lesson on how I set up screener surveys for my research projects. Tuesday the 17th, office hours Ask Me Anything, both at 10 in the morning Italy time and at 6:30 p.m., where we'll have Darren and Dr. Nick. Reaction stream. Oh yeah, don't forget later this month, we've got Michelle Ronson coming back. Monday the 23rd, she's going to talk about, do you want to do a moderated or unmoderated study and how to decide? And then on Wednesday, to match that one, I'll be doing a micro lesson on how I set up unmoderated studies. So that's most of August for you. Hopefully we will have Daniel back again in the future on another topic adventure. Daniel, any last words for today?
Take my course. It'll change your life.
Plug, everybody. So check out Daniel's course at advancedappliedthinking.com. Hashtag not sponsored. I don't make any money from this. All of your money goes straight to Daniel. I hope everybody found today interesting and food for thought. And I'm going to play us out of here, but everybody be safe, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are